Hey everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino back for Amazing Race 35, episode 5. A recap here with our Amazing Race team to talk about everything that went on. Back with us, first, a woman who never misses seeing the big picture. It's Jessica Liese. Jess, how are you?
I'm doing great, Rob. I feel like we need to do this the way that Phil did it this week. So now that you have introduced me,
Yes,
I'm going to go ahead and bring in
a
our
waterfall.
third co-host. Yes. We're doing this. We're doing this like a chain reaction. We're tipping the dominoes. So I'm going to bring in our third co-host, and this is a man who needs no introduction, of course, but I believe he's the most balanced voice of reason on the podcast, Mr. Mike Bloom.
Whoa! I didn't know my name was Mike Bloom. I'm stunned. I had no idea. Thank you. And to that point, Jess, I have for display gone together 3 of my son's bowls. Ladies and gentlemen, the time starts now. Let's see how long I could go on the podcast doing
Okay,
this.
are those made of metal, Mike?
No, I do not want to cause that much commotion, but we'll see how funny shaped my head is. Am I an Ian? We shall see.
Okay, Mike, if you're listening to the podcast version, Mike is balancing a bunch of balls on his head. I think you're missing the donut. Like that was really the
I don't need
key.
no donut, baby. I already had my
Hmm
donuts today.
Okay. All right. So we are going to be talking through our fifth leg of the Amazing Race as we flew into Jaipur, India. The Pink City. Did they ever say why it's the Pink City?
It's because of the color of the sandstone used in a lot of the buildings there.
I
I don't know if they
set it
said
up.
that, but that's why it is.
They asked, I wonder if we'll find out why it's the Pink City. Yeah.
He was correct on that. Joelopedia strikes again. But yeah, Naria, we went to the Amber Palace. We did not go to the Pink Palace.
Yeah. Okay. And ultimately, we had, as Mike is demonstrating, some head bowl balancing that the teams struggled with, and then a interesting detour where it was like the only way to win was to not play in the big picture side of the detour. One
Yeah, I mean,
very
we'll get
easy
to
side
it,
of a detour
but
and one more challenging side of the detour. As we saw Joe and Ian ultimately end up going out. They spiked a little bit last week. They got up to team number 4 before ultimately departing the race this week. Jess, any final thoughts for Joe and Ian?
I mean, they are clearly a team that loved the show. They were excited to be there. They were there. They got the adventure they wanted. I thought they'd be a little bit more competitive than they were, but I think, I'm happy for them. They had a good time, and I'm sorry to see them go.
Yeah, I'll admit I was definitely, and I talked about this as much in the first episode of our podcast, thinking this is going to be our babe team. To Jess's point, the consistently fighting with each other, and we got like a little bit of snark in the first episode, especially when they were under duress. But looking at the mood they walked away from the show with, it was all smiles and appreciation for each other. That's not necessarily what they brought, but by the end of this, I didn't feel like they needed to. I think they had a lot of fun snark with each other, Ian especially. But Rob, I mean, you talk about them getting their highest placement yet in 4th, leaving Vietnam. But with Joe and Ian, we learned what comes up must go down. And that's basically what happened, which is they had their highest placement ever. They went to India, and it was just all downhill from there.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I'm especially sad to see them go because I finally figured out which one was Joe and which one was Ian.
Well, that'll come in handy when we do our exit interview coming up on Thursday. Very exciting finish was promised in this amazing race, and I felt like that they delivered. Most exciting rickshaw race that I've seen since Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
That's a low bar, Rob.
I liked it, Mike.
Do you think
this was pretty exciting?
You think Harrison Ford and Phoebe Waller-Bridges characters would be like the perfect Amazing Race team? They're not father and daughter, right? But it'd be like sort of auxiliary to that, sort of the Steve and Anna Lee.
Yeah, I think that the ultimate team would be Indiana Jones and his dad.
Yeah, but Jones Sr. would just be an all-time horrible racer, right? It's just going to be him bumbling and fumbling all over the place. They get eliminated like leg 2.
Yeah. They'd be like sending the clues back to the United States, and then Junior would bring them, and then ultimately it would be a whole kerfuffle.
Yeah. Jones Sr. burns down one of the detours.
Only the penitent man will express pass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
listen, I think a lot of people this
Choose
week were
detours
yeah, they
poorly.
yeah, they took the big picture and they said you chose poorly, and Morgan and Lena
Mhm.
were able to finally pick the cup of not the carpenter, but the puppeteer.
Mhm. Okay. But let's talk about that finish. Jess, do we have any precedent for this type of rickshaw back and forth drag race through the streets of India?
Ooh.
I think we've had one since we've been covering this show, Rob.
Hmm.
I feel like this was the two guys that this was we got to go all the way back to season 21. We had the team of the two
Oh.
guys that one was really tall and one was really short,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
I
their
I
names are
think their name was,
escaping
like,
me right now.
Gary and Alex or something.
Mhm.
Gary and Will, I think.
That's right,
Were
Gary
they
and
Gary
Will.
and Will? Yeah. There was a rickshaw drag race between them and one other team that ended up in their elimination.
Yeah. This was pretty exciting, Mike, because
Yeah.
ultimately Morgan and Lena's guy knew his shortcut.
Yeah, I will say alright, well, that's my timer. I'm gonna have to go back and relearn
Okay, that
the
was pretty
sequence.
good.
I still have one left, and I like it. It's like a little fez. I'm
Mhm.
going full Aladdin at the moment, so I'll keep that on.
Yeah, get back to me when you can do a dance in it, Mike.
Mhm.
Okay, that's the next step for next time. Yeah, I do. I really liked it. I will admit I was taken out a bit from it when we got our infamous commercial sting between like Joe and Ian passing Morgan and Lena, because then it's like, okay, are they really going to show us 2 more minutes after a commercial break of Joe and Ian just passing by Morgan and Lena? There's got to be another lead change, and indeed that was the case. But at least in the moment, unbroken, it's a really fun sequence.
You knew the show too well.
I think, listen, I was betrayed by my super fandom there, but really fun. Again, this is a day and age where we're always asking, okay, how far were you behind, the second to last team? And it was pretty wild to actually see two teams in the same frame passing one another. It was a very fun sequence, and it wasn't exactly the foot race we were expecting. I guess more
Yeah.
so like a rickshaw race. Though Phil did say that like they finished within seconds of
He
each
said the
other. So
final three teams. He also lumped in Liam and Jeremy also in the
yeah.
all three teams finished within seconds of each other. Maybe that was a lot of seconds because it didn't seem like Liam and Jeremy were that close to the back of the pack.
Yeah,
I mean, when you
180
think about
seconds is
it,
still seconds.
Yes,
yeah, when you think about it, all of the teams finished within seconds of each other.
I guess so. Yes. This might have been like thousands of seconds later, but they
Yeah,
were still
well,
there.
they were still there. I have to wonder how fun must it be to be the rickshaw driver in this scenario? Because
Hmm.
how often do you think it is that you are driving a cab in a major city and someone gets in and tells you to gun it?
I'm on a
Like,
race. Step on it. Yeah. Because it's like all of the adrenaline, but really none of the downside where it's like they get there last. It's like,
I mean, the downside is you're going to have these two aggro Americans bellowing in your ear the entire time.
yeah, but you do the best you can and then you drop them off. And then it's like, I wonder how that worked out.
and half the time it's
Guess
probably
I'll
your
never
buddy
know.
in the other
Yeah.
cab. So it's like, yeah, I get to go drag racing with my best friend. And
Hmm.
what's the downside to that?
Yeah. I think it's fine. What, you think that Joe and Ian chewed them out, Mike?
I mean, listen, they are New Yorkers. They certainly have a pleasantness about them, but I think they certainly have a brusqueness about them as well. So, like, I just would never want to be a driver on The Amazing Race. A, because I don't think I could live with the guilt of like possibly factoring into somebody's dream of $1 million being cut short, the wish that they made last week. But then also just like having people scream at me the entire time to like go, 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 move, 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 and throwing money at me seemed like a stressful day on the job.
Whoa.
Look, if anybody's gonna be nice to a cab driver, it's Joe and Ian, AKA the team that probably takes the most cabs.
They did say that their cab driver slayed, so
Mhm.
Well, yeah.
Okay. All right. So sad to see Joe and Ian go. Next week we got Phil like really was teasing that we've got coming up. The big U-turn is coming up in the next leg. And so everybody's ready for it. Are we ready for it?
yeah.
I was
It's
born
it's
ready,
it's
Rob.
it's Robin and Chelsea. It's Robin and Chelsea. Like, this should be called Robin and Chelsea's U-turn in honor of this twist. Like, we got a little bit of tease in this episode of like, okay, maybe they're gonna gun for Steve and Annalee as, front runners, a bit of what happened to like Seth and Olive back in the U-turn in season 29. But I think by and large, we've just got so much setup over the past three episodes of Robin and Chelsea not playing with others. And I think as a result, they're going to say, yeah, we're not going to play with you either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do we think we're going to open the next episode with a vote for the U-turn?
I think you have to, because we see each of them process to this like garden spot that has a board on it that you place a vote on. Now we know the last U-turn vote was done before the leg started, but it was done in a public forum. And we talked about sort of the jankiness of this, right? Where it was like, okay, then a first person raised their hand, then other people did. It wasn't necessarily like, okay, a blind ballot or anything like that. So I would imagine it happens, and then maybe the outcome is revealed, I don't know, at the U-turn board itself. Otherwise, unless we do some sort of stop down where it's like, okay, here's an hours of operation thing, wake up tomorrow morning and go in the order you arrive to go do this U-turn vote. I just don't know how that environment would be utilized in a go, 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 go race atmosphere.
I think if we are going to go by international precedent, my recollection, and also this is not the first time I'm going to go off about Amazing Race Australia season 2.
Yes, go off.
Which I know, yeah, Mike knows it is the best Amazing Race season.
It's so
of
much fun.
any.
Oh,
yes, it's so fun.
Rob, if you ever get like the voluminous amounts of time that your life, takes away from you, you would love a team called Lucy and Amelia in particular. They are like made to be stand by Rob Cesternino.
Okay. All right. I like this. I like what you're saying. Okay. So Lucy and Amelia were teams on the Amazing Race Australia season 2. What year was Amazing Race Australia season 2?
2012.
Okay.
And
Lucy and Amelia, Amazing Race. Let me see if I can bring them up.
Yeah, their most famous moment was they almost got arrested in Dubai because they drove onto the palace compound and ended up getting detained for a bit. They
Yeah, I mean, to give
they were
away a
fun.
little bit, Lucy and Amelia are kind of like the Morgan and Lena of the Amazing Race Australia too. They are sisters. They are hot messes. They kept escaping by the skin of their teeth, but they're like incredibly entertaining.
Okay. Yeah. And what did they do?
They ended up, they almost made the finals. I think they went out 5th.
I think so, yeah.
We're digressing a long way from the original point, which was there were a lot of blind votes for U-turns and yields in Amazing Race Australia 2. And what it was before you ripped your clue, before you like officially, ripping the clue is the signal that you are starting your leg of the race. Before that happened, you had to go to the board and make your choice. And then at the beginning of the leg, everybody made their choice, and then they revealed who it was, and then everybody ripped their clues. I think it was. But it was like not part of official gameplay. It happened like during the pit stop down.
Okay.
And so then whoever it was would find that out. Mike, did they find it out when they got to the board, or did they find it out earlier than that?
I think they found it out earlier than that. No, actually, they might have found it out when they got to the board. Because to spoil again a little bit of the Amazing Race Australia season 2, there were these two just like absolute bro-y guys named Paul and Steve. Paul, I think, was the one that was like one of the most intense people to run the race since Colin of the US. Not to mention they were also winning a bunch of stuff. And so basically everyone was tired of their BS. So they just like all voted for them to get U-turned. And so I'm pretty sure they found out once they got to the U-turn board. I don't think they was necessarily revealed to them to start the pit stop, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I think at the pit start, you make your choice, you rip your clue, and you keep going. And then when you got to the board, it was like, oh, I'm the one who got the U-turn. So I think that's an elegant way to do it. It makes perfect sense. Like, this is where you're at. You're already being interviewed by the producers. You can talk about who you're choosing, and then you can get on with your race, and it's not slowing you down at all.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see how they do it next week when we have our big U-turn for Amazing Race 35. We had our teams head out to Jaipur, India. So much for airport drama, right? I mean, we ended up leaving from our last leg in Vietnam, and it was just like, all right, all teams boarded the same flight.
I think the
Yeah,
drama
but
was that there was equalization. Like that's what
yeah,
they were talking about. Like there
because
didn't. Yeah.
it's the first time they did it this season. Like, let's remember that. Rob and Corey bring that up, that we had the 2 flights out of LA into Thailand, and then we had flights get jumbled up going into Vietnam, but they still were on separate flights. Yes, some stuff did get jumbled up due to the tasks in Vietnam, but this is the first time that all teams are on the same flight together. And so, yeah, if you were one of those teams like a Rob and Corey that has been doing well up to this point, partially because you've had like some padding due to the fact that teams were arriving in the country after you, that lead is gone. And now, and in their case, it really means like if you screw one thing up, it could really put you in danger.
Yeah. But I thought that the whole thing was that the teams are going to be back in the airport. They're going to be booking flights this season.
Well, they are. They all did go to the airport and book a
Hmm.
flight. It just
Yeah.
happened that it was all the same flight.
Okay. All right. So everybody's
Again,
on.
it's a technicality. It's like they were all separated by seconds on this flight.
Yeah.
All right.
Or that no non-elimination legs.
All right. So we had basically, okay, a reset. Everybody is all bunched up to start off the India first leg of the race. And teams were going to go to the Amber Palace. Shout out, yes, for this is a classic Amazing
Why did they
Race.
not visit that in Amazing Race 7, Jess, when they went to India?
Because we already had the most beautiful amber on that leg.
Okay. Go to the Amber Palace and then grab some sugar cane and bring it up. Okay.
So many Survivor references in this one task.
Yes. Okay. Luckily for Joel and Garrett, that was it Joel or Garrett has handled sugarcane before.
Garrett has
Garrett.
handled
He was-
3.
Five hole,
says,
Jess? 5 hole task?
I don't think it's a 5-hole when you've done like 900 random weird things that all come back. I think that's a Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah.
It's a Forrest Gump. But it's interesting because Garrett is sort of pulling a Bruce here, right? He's being like, I know Kane. You don't know Kane, but I do.
He name dropped. Yeah.
Kane's from India.
Kane dropped.
Yeah. Okay. And so basically we had a task of carry things up the hill and head up there. And sometimes the elephants would steal your sugar cane. Pie.
Well, I assumed we were bringing it to the elephants. I assumed it was for them anyway.
No, they
I
just
mean,
steal it.
the man at the top of the whole hill was like an elephant handler, was he not? That's what it translated to. So like, yeah, I guess he's the middleman to give away the cane. But that would have been fun. I feel like Liam and Jeremy were like maybe exaggerating a bit. I don't think you have to deal with rascally pachyderms on your like, trudge up this San Francisco-esque hill. But it was a fun little aside. But it's interesting. This is probably the most physical thing the teams had to do this entire leg, which might have contributed to Joe and Ian's downfall, right? They talked about this last time of like, we're almost always going to take the physical thing because we've trained for that. And when you have 2 detours that don't necessarily facilitate that, you could get caught up in that.
Okay. Well, the teams were then all going to have to do the roadblock at a very similar point in time of who is feeling balanced, and the teams had to learn to dance with some pots on their head. And I think I would still be there.
Yep,
Mhm.
probably. This is going to be one of those ones. It feels to me very similar to the one that the Will and James one where they said they specifically
Yes.
practiced it at home. This is going to
Bottle
go into
dancing,
that
yeah.
pantheon. Yeah. This is
Yeah,
right
just
up there at the bottom.
put anything from your cupboard on your head. That's how you get to ace this task on The Amazing Race.
Yeah, you know who would have done great at this task? Will and James.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, my question is, do we think there are choreographed routines where you have to just do the routine, and there's ones where you are like part of the troupe of dancers, and there are other dancers next to you doing the routine? Do we think it is easier when you have other people up there doing the same dance with you, or is it harder?
I think it is easier because you can look out of your blind spot, or like even probably look to your side and like see the moves they're doing. And I feel like there's a little bit of wiggle room depending on the judging, where you can be like a millisecond off, where it's like, oh, okay, I'm supposed to do this thing. Okay, let me do this thing, where it gives you some of that, reminder in the moment, as opposed to if you're doing it on your own, like you're SOL, unless there happens to be a very friendly local who's like mirroring the movements back to you in the crowd. So I think joining the throng helps. And also, like, you get to feed off the energy a bit as well, except I don't know what energy Jeremy is feeding off of.
Mhm.
I would return to sender.
Yeah. Not you don't like serial killer energy?
I mean, Halloween is coming up, and I suppose
Mhm.
Jeremy sort of has like fun, like Jason-esque hair, or at least like could be the hair of a serial killer. But it truly was, unlike the elephant accusation, it was no exaggeration. Like, that smile was absolutely frightening.
Yeah.
That was a rictus is what that was.
Also, motion to not call it choreography after how this leg went, and motion to call it Ashleyography.
We're gonna have to rename that.
No, I think you have to call it Choreaga Anna Lee, because she killed it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
speaking of slaying.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about all the teams in greater detail, but boy, Annalie has really become like the MVP of the Amazing Race. And
Yeah,
Steve.
her and Garrett have like the most life experience between them, and they have probably like a 20-year gap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's just been on fire since like very early on in this season, maybe since like the middle of like the second leg. She's just taken off and not looked back.
Yeah,
Incredible.
I wasn't gonna pinpoint Steve as the Ann Gary of this season, but he's kind of there.
I think he's out Garying and Gary, because Gary at least had like random tidbits like, oh, I like art. Oh, I have a wife. As like Steve, we don't know anything about Steve. Steve is contributing DNA to Anna Lee. That's the only thing I know about him at this point.
He's contributing DNA and outdoor skills.
Well, Steve's gonna have to do a roadblock at some point, right?
He did the flower one.
Mm-hmm.
That
Okay.
was like the most Steve we've gotten, is him on the flower roadblock.
Yeah, otherwise it's just been Annalie just completely carrying this team. I mean, she gets through this first part of the roadblock feeling balanced. She has the Ricky Bobby strategy. She says
Yeah.
that if you're not first, you're last.
I feel like Will
She's not
Ferrell and
last.
John C. Reilly should like get royalties every time someone mentions that phrase.
Mm-hmm. If they could, yeah. I did try to start that movie for my kids. It was probably not a great choice.
Yeah, there's some problematic content in that movie, to say at the very least.
Yeah, I think comedies of the 2000s are something I might avoid showing my child for a little bit, just because of some of the elements.
For a little bit. Yeah. Okay. So we had some of the teams were really struggling. Annalie's really the only one who gets through it very quickly. We see where was it Greg or John? That is
John.
Yeah.
It's John.
A John Bawaki, if you will. He's a break dancer.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, he enjoyed the whole thing. Like, that was a smile I believed and trusted.
What do you think of the judge here? That this guy, that if he didn't like it, he'd give you the thumbs down. But when you got through, he would tell you like, "Bravo, bravo, beautiful dancing."
I think my favorite moment of his was when Ian passes the roadblock. He says, "Okay, so I have a surprise," and then he pulls out the clue. Like, that's not much of a surprise.
I mean, it'd be a lot worse considering the alternative. Like, I don't know if the mysteries would go back to Jaipur if there was just a judge that was a flasher at the end of it.
Surprise. Yeah. For Rob and Corey, though, this was some drama in this episode because it really was really looking like, Rob and Corey, they've been a fan favorite so far. Mike, it looked like that maybe this could be the leg that ended Rob and Corey.
Yeah, and it's wild considering that you think on the one hand, like, no, we have these front-running teams that hit a stumble, hit a roadblock, if you will, but they prevail. But the fact that Victor and Jocelyn went home, I think really, I would imagine probably opened up a lot in people's minds, especially those that have been doing well, of like, nope, any day could not be your day. It does not matter what
Mhm.
happened before. If you have one bad day, that's it. The Amazing Race gods are punishing like that. And so it was nice to get a bit of Rob's background as well, from a coaching perspective, that he was a former football coach at the Washington School for the Deaf. And so it's like cool to see him bring some of those tactics in with his son. Corey has such like, I guess maybe it's just the name Corey. He has big Eric Matthews energy to me. Maybe it's the middle part and the floppy hair, or just like the excitable energy, but that's the sense I get from him.
Mhm.
All right, I'd buy it.
Yeah. Okay. Boy Meets World.
Boy Meets World, yes, that's the show I was referencing.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. Maybe it's just the Corey of it all. Okay. Um, then we had our detour, which really ended up being the ultimate decider, where one leg of this detour was much harder than the other. I guess, Jess, has that been a theme this season where one side of the detour is much harder than the other?
Yeah, but I think it's fair to say that you could still do very, very well on the quote unquote hard detour, and you would make out okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be a different story if we saw like every single person that made puppets finish ahead of every single person that did big picture.
I mean, we kind of almost did, right? It was like the teams that got like locked out of the big picture, like, and had to go to the puppets, like, for the most part, finished ahead of the teams that did the big picture.
Yeah, Ashley
Yeah.
literally said it was a blessing in disguise that they got blocked out of the big picture.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm shocked that people thought big picture was going to be easier. Like I looked at
Yeah.
those two and I said immediately, I want nothing to do with that big picture one. Give me the puppets.
It has
all
the
day.
word big in it. That's not good.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Rob, you love big. Yeah, I want, maybe it's the idea of like making the puppets that maybe they had thought, okay, we have to make this like complicated marionette, when essentially they took a hunk of wood and sewed some fabric on it, and that was it. Like something we would do in kindergarten. I think
Mhm.
maybe it's one of those things where the description didn't match the actual task in both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
So
think of a marionette as having like joints, and this
Yeah.
was really like they nailed a piece of wood to another piece of wood and then put clothes on it.
Greg and John, they finished in second, and they did the big picture, and so did Andrea
Yeah.
and Milena. But then what was it? The other teams that were in the rest of the top six were all puppet teams.
But you had like, that's fully a third
Mhm.
of everybody. Like they didn't knock them back to the back of the pack. And
Mhm.
I think the thing with the big picture is that there was like a higher place to fall off of, because
Yeah.
it was one of those things where you had to notice basically 6 different details and make them perfect, that there was a chance you could get multiple things wrong and keep doing it over and over again. We only saw Morgan and Lena get the thumbs down for the puppet. And so it feels like there was probably, well, it may have taken more time to do the puppet as a task. There's a much lesser risk for you to fail it than it is this big picture where you could fail it, as we saw with teams like Morgan and Lena and Joe and Ian multiple times, if you just don't see every single thing.
The puppet
Right.
judges seemed very generous. That you did the puppet, and then they gave you a thumbs up, and then you had to just go there, and then it seemed like you just like shook the puppets. Like there was no puppet show or anything that you
Yeah.
had to do, like do a dance with the puppets.
What a week for Justin Timberlake, between this reference to Bye 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 and the Britney biography.
having a week
Yeah,
for
are these all
sure.
good things, Mike?
I don't know. I don't know if Genuine was one of the judges.
Yeah.
Well, I have a hot take on detours.
Okay.
Ooh.
Which my hot take is I want every detour from here on out to be both sides of the detour have a limited number of stations. And that limited number of stations mathematically forces teams to have to do another one.
Yeah.
Because I think
Well,
that's made for so much great drama this season. And
Yeah.
it lessens the possibility that you're going to have a detour that they set up a whole thing and nobody does it.
mhm.
Yeah, it's the vegetables on the plate of like, you better do this other side of the detour. We went through a lot of work making this for you, so you better go through with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering how many teams were going to be able to do the big picture. I'm like, how many like setups do they have for this? Because we saw where Steve and Annalise said, okay, we'll do the puppets. And then every other, we'll do big picture. We'll do big picture. We'll do big picture. And then finally, we started to see where, okay, this is all filled up.
My question is, this big picture setup, was this something they made just for the Amazing Race, or is this something that's there all the time?
Famous art. Yeah.
Oh yeah, is it
Like-
like one of those cutouts that you pose in of like, hey, get your
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if I want to use the same nose ring that a bunch of other randos were doing to pose in this photo.
Yeah, there is that.
This
But there's a
tourist
lot
trap.
of museums that have like a kid's corner with a dress up trunk and an activity with like big props.
Yeah.
The Museum of the City of New York had an exhibit last year of the Jewish deli, and you could like pick up giant bagels and move them around, and it was very fun.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if the Amazing Race has a final pit stop in New York, maybe that'd be good.
Could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the puppets seemed like that was the way to go. It did seem like that it was much tougher to do the big picture. And yeah, once we got to Todd and Ashley were the first team that couldn't get through. And then we saw that the rest of the teams that got funneled to the all dolled up, it ended up being a blessing. Morgan and Lena, they had the big decision to make. After 2+ hours, they switch. Jess, they said their rule was 25 minutes on a detour and then switch. What do you think of that?
2 hours is significantly longer than 25 minutes. And I think I don't know if I like 25 minutes as a rule either, but I like it in terms of like, if you've had the judge come over a certain number of times and he keeps rejecting it and you have no idea what you did wrong, like get out of there. Like, 3 rejections is probably your limit.
Okay, 3 strikes rather than time.
Yeah, 3 strikes rather than time, because you could be very close. But if you have no idea what you're doing wrong, then don't keep beating your head against the wall for 2 hours.
And I do like that they at least had a mentality of when to switch detours, because I do feel like teams come in with this idea of like, we're never switching detours. That's the ultimate time sink. That's how teams get eliminated. But like, especially when you have still 10 teams left in the race, you have some room to take risks, especially if you feel like you're going to be coming in last. Like, I might as well swap. I might as well hop over, especially if I feel like there's no way that I'm getting this. They were so insistent of like, no, all of these are correct. It's us that are wrong. Like, they clearly, to Jess's point, we're not seeing it. I do not think they would if they spent another 25 hours or 25 years at that board. So at that point, why not have it in your mind's eye to switch? Now, that sort of tempestuousness can cut in another direction. We saw that with their waste of the express pass, right? Of like, oh, I don't want to do this. Let's get out of here. You can make those snap judgments, but almost always you want to take some time in there, realize if this is a doable task for your particular set of skills, and then move on if it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the option of knowing, like they have a luxury of a lot of information. They know there are other teams still there. They know they're not in last place. They can kind of do some calculus there. Like, I thought it was absolutely wild that Steve and Annalie rock up to the mat and do not know if they're in first or last place.
Yeah,
Sure, they left the roadblock in first.
Well, it's one of those situations on the Amazing Race where they were like, they didn't see another team. So that could be very good or very bad.
Yeah, if you've got other teams, you can potentially, I think it was kind of, there was absolutely no downside to switching in that moment, because you could potentially pass these other teams that are having the same problems.
Yeah.
And you yourself, if you stay there, you're going to continue to have those same problems.
Yeah. It also helps that Jess talked about this a lot, the proximity of the detours in relation to each other.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that because Morgan and Lena finished their detour, get into their rickshaw. They're like, okay, sir, take us to the pit stop. We're in last. And they see Joey and Ian out. They're like, we're not in last. We're not in last. Get the hell out of here. Come on, come on. So
Yeah.
it's fun. This is an instance where having the detours right next to each other not only incentivized Morgan and Lena to hop over because it was so close, but it led to this really fun moment where you're able to gauge, even if someone else is doing another detour, like how far along they are.
Let's talk about the teams in a little bit more focus, starting with our first place team. And Steve and Annalie, congratulations to them. They not only win this leg of the race, they also get a prize finally.
Well
$3,000
deserved.
each in cash.
I think that's the best. Like, everybody wants to get cash for your birthday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or your
Yep.
It's
wedding.
like you're not getting Expedia bucks. You're not getting a curated experience. You're getting money that you can use for stuff.
Yeah. So can they keep it going?
They're on a high.
They're
Mm-hmm.
on a high, but again, I look at what happened to Jocelyn and Victor, and I can never say. And when the Amazing Race is well designed, they shouldn't continue that hot streak. We have certainly seen teams do it in the past, Dave and Rachel being like a key example of that. With no offense to Steve and Annalie, there are no Dave and Rachel in terms of skill set. So I think they're going to keep their harmoniousness going. But we saw last week and this week the most consistent teams get tripped up by random tasks.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta feel like it's coming for Steve and Annalie. And I wouldn't be surprised. Again, I don't think they're getting U-turned. Next week, Robin and Chelsea have the 1-2 punch of also getting a first place finish and also not being well liked by the other teams. And so I think they might get a couple of votes thrown their way, but as much as they're fearful of being targeted as a threat, I don't think that's coming this time around.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
where are their weaknesses though? Like, what do we see happening?
They did say they're not the strongest or the fastest. So maybe in these tests of like brute physicality, maybe there's not always going to be another option to pick besides the mattress picking.
Mhm.
And the fact that we didn't get a lot of that this leg outside of the hike up the hill. So maybe there are those other tasks where they may not do well. Maybe Annalie gets put on like a super brutal physical thing. Maybe Steve bungles it, in something that requires more hand-to-hand dexterity. We saw him, swing a hammer down on his daughter's thumb, so maybe he's not the best at hand-eye coordination.
I mean, the good news is though, the rest of the field doesn't exactly look like a CrossFit gym. They're not going up against the super buff broy teams that,
Mhm.
we have a lot of strong teams, but I don't see a team here that I feel like is completely outclassed in the physical fitness department by all of the other teams or
Mhm.
really any of the other teams.
Yeah. Don't bet against Annalie, Mike. She's so scrappy.
Yeah, listen, she's overspent our estimations at every turn, so like I don't want to necessarily do that. I'm going to keep underrating them so that they keep surprising me every week.
Mhm. Okay. Well, congratulations to our first place team, Steve and Annalie. Phil really went out of his way to explain to them how the U-turn worked.
He clearly
Uh,
workshopped this as the teams went along, right? He's like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm gonna give you the first draft, and then I'm gonna slowly redact text as each other team arrives.
I mean,
Mhm.
we've seen Phil workshop his Matt chat in real time, so that doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's
It's like,
like, okay, you guys do the usual thing. I gotta think over how I'm gonna exactly couch this whole U-turn vote thing.
He's like, next week, it's going to be a board, and the board is going to have the ability to give a U-turn to another team. You're going to have a chance to cast a vote. Somebody's going to get U-turn. They got to do both sides of the detour. Like, okay, all right, we're
I
ready.
mean, we haven't seen a detour in 3 seasons. Maybe there were these teams that found the race through COVID and don't know what a U-turn is.
Mhm. Okay.
Maybe they assume we all forgot, so he's got to refresh us.
All right. Refresh our memory for Steve and Annalie. All right. Big week for Steve and Annalie. Congratulations to them. Okay. Bounce back for Greg and John. They were lamenting last week. Remember when we used to be at the front of the pack? Remember we used to finish in third? This was their best finish of the season to come in second place. They finished in third place the first 2 legs. Then they had a pair of 8th place finishes after that. But here they are. They're back.
Yeah,
They're
the Code
doing
Bros.
Yeah, they're doing Mike Bloom's favorite thing of relating everything they do back to what they do for a living.
I love it.
Mm.
It's so good. Like the shoe and the horn have never been well met better than Greg and John being like, "All right, debug this detour, guys."
Mhm.
And they're not even doing it prompted either, which is the best part, because sometimes if they're only doing it in confessionals, you can safely assume that it's production, like asking them, okay, how is the Amazing Race like playing in the NFL? But
Mhm.
here they are just like, everything is like what they do for a living. That's just how their brains work.
I'm sure they've communicated like purely in DOS growing up. Like these two are such computer geeks. I absolutely love them. I love their disposition as well. Like even when they're sad about no longer being in the lead, like I still have a lot of enjoyment from them. And I think they are like low key threats to do really well. I do think they are like a surprisingly physical team. If you look at them, clearly they have like a brain and an analytical way of working through things, even something like this detour. And they've shown, like, yes, they did get 8th place in Vietnam, but the fact that they're back in the front of the pack after like excelling at a couple tasks, I think are good things for these guys.
Now they
Yeah, I
made an
think
alliance also in this leg of the race. They became sibling pairs with the Franklins, Morgan and Lena. They're all last name Franklin.
has this ever happened on Amazing
Franklin
Race
comes
before?
alive.
I mean, I would if I mean honestly, if I were on the race and I heard that, I'd be like, my
Another
last name's
puppet.
Franklin
Yeah.
too. Hey, look at that.
Yeah, and then they see your passport and they know you're lying, and then they vote for you to be U-turned.
No, the
Mhm.
Franklin's silent in my last name.
Oh, Mike Franklin Bloom.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yes.
I'm like
Hyphenate.
Nick. I'm like
Yes.
Nick
My
Cage's
mother's maiden
character,
name
and
is Franklin.
yeah,
Yes.
I'm related to Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, congratulations to Greg and John for getting 1-0 place.
Mhm. Okay.
Oh, that's so stupid. I love it. Do you think
Look,
if Phil knew binary better, do you think he would communicate it to them in that language?
I think he would. I think he gets one language per season, but I think he would be thrilled to do something that deeply stupid.
Mhm. Okay.
But
Well,
it takes a lot of hard work. See, podcasting is a lot like computer programming. It takes a lot of really hard work to get to the point where you can come up with lines that stupid.
mhm. All right. Well, Greg and John, congratulations on second place. All right. Here we go. Joel and Garrett. They are here in third place. And so another bounce back. They're a little bit they went from seventh to ninth to second to ninth and now back up.
I love these guys. I think these guys are my favorite team. I can officially put that stamp on it now that we're like almost halfway through the race. They just have such a goofy energy about them. I think it's Joel in particular just has like this big smile that you see through the beard that is kind of Charlie Day-esque, like it wins out through everything. Garrett comes in with apparently this voluminous life that he's led of all these
Mm-hmm.
random things that he's done. The facial hair is great. They just have such like a really fun attitude about things, and they have the capacity to do pretty well. I mean, even looking within this leg, I'm pretty sure that Garrett was probably like the third to last to leave the roadblock, I believe. And they leapfrog all the way up to third, passing several teams that they showed up after because they did this strategy. And I don't know if it's the right strategy, but it was good for them. Whereas rather than dividing one puppet each, they both worked on one puppet at a time. Garrett talked about doing the lotuses that he wished he had another pair of hands to do it. And so essentially it was many hands makes light work where they're just going to concentrate on doing everything on one puppet. And therefore they don't necessarily have to like keep going back and forth to add things.
Mm-hmm. Joel had lamented that the dress didn't have more volume, which was the first time that he said that. Usually he just feels that way about his beard.
Doesn't he have daughters?
Hmm.
Yeah, but I don't know if they're at an age where he's going to talk about the volume of their dresses.
Maybe not. I feel
It
like
feels like a Duggar thing.
yeah, no, it's like a pretty princess thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The dress volume was on point for Joel and Garrett. Their puppets were
Yeah.
fine.
They did an
Yeah.
amazing job. I am really excited to see a team like this come in. And I feel like the sense I get is that Joel is the super fan of the two. And it's like he wants to go on Amazing Race. He has
And
to think
Garrett,
about,
if you will.
well, Garrett is the and Garrett, but I think the closer analog is where you have one character You have the one person that definitely really wants to go on the race or is definitely a shoe-in for casting, and then he has to think carefully about who he's gonna bring along. It's more of a Ryan and Dusty situation where,
Mm.
Ryan was definitely gonna get cast, and it was like, who is he gonna bring along who's gonna help him the most?
Mhm.
And it turns out that Dusty is like the secret superstar of the pair. I think it's much like this. Like, I think Joel was the super fan. He brings along Garrett, who has this huge wealth of experience and turns out to secretly be the main character of the team.
Jess, did you happen to watch the Challenge USA season 2?
I was about to ask Rob, do you think Garrett is a fan of Johnny Bananas?
I heard a
Maybe.
I don't know, I heard a rumor that Johnny Bananas was going to be on the next season of The Traitors, and I flipped a table.
Yes.
Anyway, yes, I did watch the
Yeah.
challenge sort of.
Yes.
I paid tepid attention to it while I was doing busy work at
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, Dusty being the loyal friend, that narrative was questioned on the Challenge.
I was surprised it was the same guy, to be honest. Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
he did almost nothing to suggest that he is man's best friend on the challenge. Like
No,
Certainly
he
not
was
to Lewis.
this was the golden retriever that was raised by wolves, right? This is finally him playing out.
Mhm.
totally different type of dog.
Yeah. Okay. So Joel and Garrett, they struggled with the first part on the roadblock, but then made it all up on the assembling their dolls.
Those puppets, again, they look like such pieces of crap. I cannot get over it. I just like Steve. This is the one thing I know about Steve. Steve held up one of his puppets like, this one looked like Elvis Presley. That's the only thing I know about Steve 5 episodes into The Amazing Race.
And they didn't even have to decorate them. Like they just had to put the clothes on them that they were already selected. They didn't have to match a model. Like they should have had to paint the face on it at least.
And then all
Mhm.
they had to do, because that's the thing, like Chelsea's like, I would not like to do any more performing today. Thank you very much. I am not an extrovert, so I will not do the puppets. But the performing was just wiggle your fingers and have these puppets do a seizure midair.
You know,
Yeah.
this is how some people dance, Mike, and you shouldn't make fun of it.
Mhm. Okay. All right.
Genuine.
All right. So, team number 4, as we reach the waterfall stage of the Amazing Race reveal. Okay. Phil says, okay, introduce the next team. It was Andrea and Milena. They got team number 4. Good week for Andrea and Milena. I believe this is their best finish yet. They started off in 2 10th places, a 9th, a 7th. They're trending up.
I was skeptical when my 7-year-old told me that this was his winner pick, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to buy into the hype.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, this is what happens when
Well,
like
they
they
were
don't
in
really
the Pink City, Jess.
It's true.
It's a 5
Pink
hole.
clothes. Yep. It's
Mhm.
But yeah, I think I think that I mean, I think it helps that this is a leg where it wasn't entirely physical. Again, the uphill climb was the only physical thing they had to do, and they didn't have to navigate. I feel like those have been like the two major things they've had a lot of difficulty with. Also, handling fish didn't have to do it this time around, and so they, alongside Greg and John, were really one of only two teams to like not have that much of a problem with it. Like it took them a few tries, but not nearly as many tries as it
Mhm.
did for Liam and Jeremy and Joe and Ian and Lena and Morgan. So it's good. I mean, this could be another Joe and Ian situation where like they hit their best placement here at 4th and then they just completely crumble the next leg. But I'm loving what they're putting out so far.
Okay. They were having a little bit of a struggle with the big picture, but they figured it out.
Yeah, they got there. I love that Milena has literally no poker face whatsoever. Like
Mhm.
you always know if she's having a good time or not. And there's a point they get to the roadblock and they open it up and it says who's feeling balanced and Milena's like, Andrea's doing it.
Mhm.
And I love that she's kind of driving the team and that she's also like her heart is on her sleeve at all times. And she's got very big feelings.
Who
Yeah.
did the better Phil impression, Joel or Andrea?
I think I gotta give it to Andrea because I think Andrea was trying to do a straight Phil impression. I don't know
Yeah.
that Joel was.
But here's my critique, okay? Phil gave them the keys to the car. they needed to crash the car. They needed to say, I'm sorry, that Todd and Ashley, you are the last team to arrive. You have been eliminated.
Which would have been terrible for them because they thought they were eliminated.
No.
Yeah, or you need to screw it up in an entertaining way. Like, you are team number 114.
Or no, I think even better is you troll in the best way. You go, Todd and Ashley, congratulations, you're team number 1.
Team number 1.
Yes.
And you win $12,000.
You win $1 million. He's like, you're gonna bankrupt us.
You win the use of Phil's credit card for the rest of the leg.
No, we can't make tough as nails.
Yeah, no, but they all were very good, and they did it. They said the right thing, and so all right, congratulations to Andrea and Milena, best finish so far. All right, let's talk about Todd and Ashley. Todd and Ashley, they got very fortunate that they got frozen out of the big picture, had to go make puppets.
I have a question about Todd and Ashley.
Yes.
How tall are these people? Because you saw Ashley doing
Todd's
the
a
dance.
basketball player. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a basketball player. He's got to be at least like 6'8".
Oh yeah, he's got Wemby height for sure.
Right. And you see Ashley, and she's like a full head taller than any of the other dancers. And it didn't seem like everybody else was that much taller than the other dancers. And it's just like, I think they look like they are normal height because they're normal height relative to each other. But they must be both extremely tall humans.
I think that makes sense. Listen, every pot has a lid or a bowl to put on your head, but like, does Todd want to hurt his back that much bending down to kiss his sweetie? Does Ashley really want to give her calves that much of a workout sitting on her tiptoes, kissing her boo thing? No, you want to find like a relative height between the two of you.
I mean, spoilers for Love is Blind season 5. The one team that makes it to the altar has like a 14-inch height differential. And it's it hurts my neck just watching them try to kiss each other.
Yeah, Todd was getting a little impatient waiting for Ashley to do her dance.
Well, because Ashley has this method that is, and we've seen this before, like, yes, you want to get the details down, but you can be a little too perfectionist. As I spoke about before, there's a little bit of variance that comes with this judging where you don't have to do it like immaculately necessarily. And it seemed like Ashley, for whatever reason, maybe it's because of the queuing system, was like, all right, I don't want to stand in line and wait to do this over and over again. I'm just going to practice it until I feel good about it. Everyone has their method,
but I actually hate standing in line, Mike. They will give everybody the clue just so that they don't have to stand in lines.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be so pissed when they have to wait for the U-turn board next week, especially if they're U-turn. But I do think that, you know, I would imagine Ashley has a way that she works, and I can't really judge her for that. But I could also see Todd's frustration in like, literally everyone else has gone in and tried it, and teams are leaving, and you just keep practicing and practicing. Like, it's only going to get so good.
Okay. They had to work on their puppets, and they had a little bit of a struggle, but they ultimately got through to get to team number 5. Anything else about Todd and Ashley?
Yeah, I don't mind Ashley's approach here, although, you know, we've talked about how you should at least go and try it one time when you can, like, just to see what it is. But she's spending all of that time practicing rather than like waiting for her turn.
Yeah.
So she can just like keep an eye on when it's a good time to go up and spend the rest of that time practicing. It's not a bad strategy.
There was also a point when they tried to ask Robin and Chelsea for directions, and Robin and Chelsea were like, act like you don't see them. Act like you don't see them. Does that work?
Yeah, they pretended to look down at their phones, like, oh, I didn't even see you there. I'm so sorry. But Todd and Ashley are like, oh, there better not be a U-turn board on this next leg that's going to be explained to us by Phil Kogan. I swear to God.
Okay.
They'll get what's coming to them.
There's Todd and Ashley. Okay. The bounce back story of the episode. It's Rob and Corey. They had been running such a strong race up until that one task where they had been in the top half every single step of the way, and it looked like maybe an elimination was on the horizon. But thanks to being frozen out of the big picture, they get through the puppet show, and bam, amazingly, team number 6.
Corey's celebration is one of my favorites in recent memory. Like, this dude was crowing in excitement because I would imagine, as much as Rob was trying to really push this positive attitude onto him, like, he had to feel like he blew this for his dad, that it's only because of him that they were in last place. And so for him to find out, like, not only did you survive, but also, like, you actually skipped past 3 or 4 teams, must have been, like, feeling like he was in first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Corey was getting very emotional during the first part of it, thought that he was going to potentially be the reason that they ultimately lost the Amazing Race. So it's a nice story. They found out about the U-turn. Just Rob tells everybody, time to get, he's going to be very sneaky.
Yeah, I don't know if it's sneaky if you're telling everybody you're going to be sneaky.
Yeah.
Double bluff.
Yes.
I don't know,
He's
man.
so beloved. He's just like, I'm going to be very sneaky next time. Everyone's like, yes.
Oh, you. I mean,
Yeah.
how crazy would it have been, though, if, like, we had these teams that were, like, the front runners for the first several legs, and then episode 4, we lose Victor and Jocelyn. Episode 5, we lose Rob and Corey. Up is down, left is right. It would have been pretty wild. I'm glad they didn't here, but
yeah.
They are Team Chaos, though, here. Between Rob saying this and then the next time on, when Rob's like, you want to just do rock, paper, scissors to figure out who to U-turn? Like, this team is low-key messy, and I love it.
Yeah, there's nothing sneaky about deciding your U-turn with rock, paper, scissors.
Okay. All right. There's Rob and Corey. All right. Team number 7. Here they are, maybe headed to a U-turn. It's Robin and Chelsea.
I will
Coming off of
say,
last week's first to arrive, now back down to 7.
yep, because of, again, this detour, they were the ones that really struggled with it. I will say they contributed my favorite funny moment of the episode, which is the task judge walks up to their big picture and he says, no. And Robin goes, hey! Like it was some sort of insult to them.
Well, he was
a little
pretty
rude, this
snarky,
judge.
yeah.
This is why if the judge could use a U-turn, I know who he'd use it on.
It really felt like that judge should have had a spray bottle when he was telling people they were wrong. Like, just squirt them with the water. No.
Bad.
Yeah. So for Robin and Chelsea, how did they do with the choreography?
I think they did fine.
Yeah.
I think we barely
they
saw
finished in 5th there. Ultimately, they got slowed down a little bit to ultimately come in 7th after the big picture. They were struggling a little bit with it, but eventually they got it as well. But as we mentioned with the other teams that they did not play so great with Todd and Ashley, we saw last week with Annalie, they were not making friends.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not what they came here for, Rob.
No.
I would imagine that those two teams are going to lead the charge to U-turn Robin and Chelsea. And listen, the late great Rudy Bosch often said, like, when it comes to a first vote, like, depends on who. It doesn't matter if you have a reason. It's just like whoever throws a name out sometimes. And so that might be the case here.
Okay. All right. For Robin and Chelsea, we wish them good luck with the U-turn next week. Liam and Jeremy. Okay. They had the strong week last week. They end up allegedly seconds away from last place, but not a terrible showing for Liam and Jeremy.
Yeah, the editing did not suggest that they were at any point in danger of being eliminated. In fact, it was almost an afterthought. We're spending so much time on this like great rickshaw showdown that it was like, oh yeah, wait a second, there's 3 teams out there, not 2. What about Liam and Jeremy? Oh yeah, let's check them in so we can get to the meat of the story. Which isn't to say that they were invisible this week. I feel like we got more of them this week than we have at any point up till now. And they had an incredibly entertaining, to be sure.
Yeah.
But in the end, it was like they didn't matter.
Yeah. Which one of them did the choreography and had the serial?
Oh, that was Jeremy. That was Jeremy.
Classic
Jeremy's dancing.
Yeah.
Well, but according to Liam said he would have been much worse at it. So, like, considering this was apparently the better outcome between the two, I would be frightened for what Liam would look like doing this. But yeah, I mean, I think sort of low key to your point, Rob, something we should be a little worried about with them is like they had their bounce back week. They came back to life from dead last to alive again. And they fell pretty much back to where they've been this entire race, which was like bringing up the rear. These guys are surprisingly not doing well at these tasks. I think
Mhm.
they have, as we've spoken about, like some more Achilles heels than we thought that they would have. That's really what happened with Jeremy here with the dancing. It put them in that back position, and then they weren't able to necessarily make up time on the big picture. So I don't know if you asked me like who's most likely to go just carte blanche without any knowledge of tasks outside of the U-turn, mucking things up. I think Liam and Jeremy would be like top 3 for me.
I mean, they're sitting at the bottom and they've already had their personal story bump. It kind of feels like they're going to be circling the drain fairly soon.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they have a week where they have some tasks that really play into their wheelhouse, but it doesn't seem like that they are cut out for the top half of the pack anytime soon. So we like them, but it's not looking great for Liam and Jeremy. Okay. Then we had the team that narrowly cheated death for the second week in a row. It's Morgan and Lena, and they cannot keep racing this way.
This
No,
is
they
some,
should.
yeah, you are right, Mike. This is Lucy and Amelia upside.
They
all the
should
way.
absolutely keep racing like this because I love them. I love them so much. They're bringing the mess that I thought Joe and Ian would. When Morgan gets hit in the eyebrow with Lena's needle and replies by saying, "You're sewing in a stupid way, Lena." Like that is just incredible. That is my ox is broken adjacent of just incredible lines on The Amazing Race.
Yeah, I thought she stabbed her in the eye with the needle.
I mean, that would be an ending to remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was close. You wouldn't think that that would have been one of the more dangerous tasks on the Amazing Race, but I would say that was it Lena who was sewing that way?
Yeah, like to be fair, probably just like don't put your eye in general within 2 feet of any
Should they wear
needle at any point in
goggles?
time.
Yeah.
I didn't think they needed to, but apparently so. If Morgan's just gonna stick her face in Lena's lap
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think Morgan had a point.
in her eye.
Yeah, the needle
Mhm.
had a point.
Needle had a point. Yeah. And so for these teams, like they really did cheat death. They waited so long to switch. They ultimately went to this puppet show and then pulled it out barely by the grace of a tuk-tuk shortcut.
Yeah, I've just been loving this narrative. I know it's not, I don't know, for some people it's not fun to like watch like one team scrape by because like the idea of the Amazing Race, some people think should be survival of the fittest, that like the weakest teams get weeded out early on. And Morgan and Lena seem to have some of the biggest holes in their racing skills than a lot of the other teams, considering there are just tasks every leg that they just crumble on. At the same time, I'm having so much fun watching them both from like a storyline of how are they going to escape being cornered this time to also just like their dynamic of trying to find each other as sisters, but also summarily like spatting with each other while they are spiraling down every leg.
Yeah. All right. Well, they need to pick up the pace here because they cannot keep racing this close to the end and live to tell the story for much longer. So hopefully, I don't think they're in any danger of being U-turned, though. Right?
I
They'll be
wouldn't think
fine.
so, unless it's the philosophy of we're going to U-turn somebody that's definitely going to get knocked out of the race, so
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
we're not facing the wrath of the really good team that bounced back from it.
All
Yeah,
right.
but the only reason I could see they do that is if they did like a regular version of the U-turn where it's like you approach the board in the middle of the leg and then you're like, okay, I know Morgan and Lena are behind me. If indeed it is going to be this vote done before the leg starts, then there's no reason to vote for them
Yeah.
unless you just feel like, oh, it's padding out me so that I know I'm probably going to be able to survive this leg.
All right.
Yeah, not
And
to
then
mention it's
finally,
blind, so
True.
yeah. Then the last team, we mentioned them already. It's Joe and Ian. What else can we say about Joe and Ian? I mean, did they have that bad of a leg this time around?
I didn't see anything like hugely disastrous for them. It was just like they were not good at the tasks. So, that's why they lost. They were not
Mm-hmm.
good at the
Yeah.
tasks and they came in last place.
Yes.
I think to that point, the individual performances from some of the other teams in the tasks were more visual. Corey did the worst job on the roadblock. It took him 16 tries, 8 times more than Annalie to finish. And I feel like if you go to the detour, I feel like Morgan and Lena were more so like the focus of just they kept getting it wrong again and again and again and kept falling through the ranks. So Joe and Ian like didn't do the worst from like a time perspective on any of the tasks, but at the same time, they did badly enough to have them fall into last place. And even though they got that momentary respite by passing that rickshaw, it was
Mm-hmm.
only momentary, and then they get
Yeah.
eliminated because of it.
What was their issue with the big picture? What were they struggling with?
There was this one portrait that was behind them putting on, the little iconography and doing their own poses that had like an extra sash over it that they just weren't noticing over and
Mm.
over and over again. And then they finally did.
Did they have a
It seemed like
highlight on the? Good.
it seemed like there were a couple of those that certain colors of the picture set, it was easier to see on them
Yeah.
than it was on others. And I think they got one that was kind of low contrast.
That's the thing is if you had a choice of color, they talked about this actually with the vinyl, right? About like strategy behind it. I would probably want to pick one of the like more neon-esque colors like the yellow or the orange because it's brighter to notice discrepancies in details whereas if they're darker colors, green, blue, purple, you'd really have to like squint to notice minute differences.
Yeah.
I think orange is the best way to go here because it clashes with everything else in those pictures. Like the yellow, sometimes the white was hard to see against the yellow, and sometimes the brown and black was hard to see against the purple, but everything stood out on the orange.
Did they have a signature moment on the race, Joe and Ian?
Going the wrong way to the airport was probably the most memorable moment for them.
Yeah.
I also think the like microcosm of their race was that floating market task where they were in first place to start the day, and then just because they forgot one scrap of photo, it had them fall like all the way to 7th or 8th place. That was Joe and Ian in a nutshell. It's like they would find opportunities to get ahead. They weren't like completely unskilled, but then they'd make one mistake or falter at one thing and they'd be tumbling back. And this time around, it happened yet again, but there wasn't enough like clearance behind them for them to survive the leg.
All right. Well, that's the Amazing Race, leg number 5. We get ready for the U-turn next week. Anything else about this leg that we want to mention before we wrap things up? We'll have another half of the leg in India, right?
Yep, looks like we're doing some stamps. Seems like we're going back to the physical stuff. Looks like there might be some like delivery or cart pulling in the heat, which clearly wears down on Joel and Garrett. Though I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't the only team being affected by that. So yeah, should be a fun time to assumingly send off India. But I'm excited. This was the first time we've been here in a few seasons, and I feel like we never left.
Okay. All right. Jess, what else is coming up for you?
What else is coming up for me is Fear the Walking Dead is back, and we have this text group that we have this group chat, and it's every week is just all caps rage from at least half the group. And the group is Chappelle and AJ Mass and Josh Wigler and myself. And you can always tell who has pulled up the screener and started watching it because the all caps rage texts keep coming in. So we're going to have a lot of really angry takes about this series, especially coming off of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, which was actually very good and enjoyable. And we are going from that to this.
Nothing is more Fear the Walking Dead than all caps rage texts.
You don't even know the half of it, Rob. Like, they are bringing back characters from when you used to recap it.
Yes.
And
that in the end, it shall be as it was in the beginning.
Yep. The end is the beginning. Time is a flat circle. And all caps rage about Fear the Walking Dead is coming into your ear holes at post show recaps, where we are about to start recapping episodes 1 and 2. We were all so angry with episode 1, we decided to wait and do it as a bundle with episode 2.
Okay. All right. Well, Jess, great job here today. Mike, what's coming up for you?
So I'll start with the post-show recaps thing to try to transition off of Jess and my best Phil impression. So Battlestar Galactica, of course, covering that with Josh Wigler every week, but it's all about reality TV. We have a off-ramped one major CBS reality show. Of course, the Challenge USA had its big final for season 2 last week. I spoke with 7 out of 8 of the finalists, including Dusty's Amor, Johnny Bananas, about their
Ah,
time in the season. Did a Big Brother exit interview last week. We'll be doing 2 this week in honor of the double eviction. Of course, speaking with this week's cast away from Survivor 45, as well as doing a B&B. Last week we had Mary Krakowski on, which was a lot of fun. Did some buffer snuff, rating some fashion. And this week it's time to jaunt, baby, because we got Jordan Kalish on, and I'm sure he's going to bring something outlandish, and I'm very excited for it. So check.
anytime you can get jaunty Jordan Kalish back.
Oh, absolutely. And then the last thing I'll plug is, listen, we were talking about Todd's height and basketball prowess before, and I had a chance to explore a lot of players' basketball
Hmm.
prowess. I was on 2 podcasts on the 32 Fans podcast with Akiva and Alex, where, Rob, I'll give you a tip of my bowl. Back in the day, you had some people help you choose an NBA team. I wanted one as well in honor of the upcoming season, and they helped me walk through everything I needed to know about some of these ridiculous people and teams. And by the end of it all, I had a team that is now my rooting interest for the NBA season. So
Okay.
if you want to find out what that might be, as well as learn some things about the NBA and some of its leading players, feel free to check that out.
All right. Mike, nice work. And then we will have our exit interviews coming up on Thursday when we speak with Joe and Ian. Justin and I will do that here on RHAP. Mike will have an interview over on parade.com. So be on the lookout for that. And then next week, we'll reconvene to talk about the U-turn here, the highly anticipated big U-turn here at the midpoint of the season, believe it or not, for the Amazing Race 35. Make sure you subscribe to everything we're doing over at Rob is a Podcast. When you go to robisawebsite.com/subscribe. Thank you for joining us. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.